Right, so whilst Tory alleged tax opportunist, shall we call him, Nadhim Zahawi continues to profess his innocence despite paying nigh on £5 million to HMRC to settle this tax affair scandal he's got himself embroiled in, including, let's not forget, a 30% penalty because, of course, that's a sure indicator of innocence, isn't it? But Rishi Sunak has been backed into a corner sufficiently that he's finally given permission for his sleaze czar to investigate some sleaze at last. I know, sit down. Shock horror. But this went massively underreported over the Christmas period, as the sleaziest things always are. They always leak out this dirty, nasty news just before they disappear on their hollybobs, these Tories, of course, don't they not? But Sunak appointed a new sleaze czar to replace Lord Geidt, who you might remember was Boris Johnson's sleaze czar. He who finally quit the role after the weight of filth he was having to bury for Johnson finally got too much for him. The whole wallpaper fiasco, you might remember, but it was the breach of the ministerial code over Partygate that finally was the last straw for him, and he left the role. But he was incidentally the second sleaze czar to quit under Johnson, or expire, perhaps. The weight of the job clearly takes its toll when we're talking about Boris Johnson, of course. But the earlier one was a chap called Sir Alex Allan. He quit when Johnson let Priti Patel off the hook for all of the bullying that she was accused of. Sleaze might as well functionally be Johnson's middle name, as if he doesn't have enough of those already. But given one of those middle names just happens to be Boris itself, replacing that with Sleaze, so we all refer to him as that instead, would be entirely more appropriate to my mind. Anyway, the sleazy bit over Christmas was that Sunak quietly appointed another entitled individual to this role, Sir Laurie Magnus, another Sir, another Lord. You've got to have a title for this job, clearly. More on him in a moment, but ordinary people who know scum when they see it clearly need not apply. But the sleazy bit is more the fact that this particular sleaze czar isn't allowed to investigate any sleaze unless Sunak gives him permission to. This role is supposed to be independent of government, but it's clearly anything but. Anytime you hear that word independent, be it in some body of oversight, or be it a local election candidate perhaps, or be it somebody working in some capacity connected with national government like this chap, who is supposed to be some sort of form of oversight, the word does a lot to dismiss any concerns you might otherwise have about them. Oh, they're independent. They don't get involved in party politics, you might think. Oh, they can't be coerced. They're independent. They make their own decisions. They're independent. Well, this guy, Sir Laurie Magnus, certainly isn't independent if Sunak pulls his strings functionally, though whether he can make his own conclusions remains to be seen, because he's had to be given the nod from Sunak to investigate Zahawi. Now, this is why all those bullying allegations, for example, against Dominic Raab have gone ignored, as well as those made against Suella Braverman over information leaks and ignoring legal advice regarding asylum seekers. Sunak has functionally stood in the way of that, but he stood aside over Nadhim Zahawi now, though. So this is the new sleaze czar's first real test. Now, Nadhim Zahawi, through his denials in the face of what appears to be clear evidence of wrongdoing regarding his taxes, is now massively damaged goods. I think he'll be lucky to still be chairman of the Conservative Party by the end of the week. That he's still in that post, though, shows how weak and or dismissive of the entire affair Sunak has been himself. But then his wife did quite the number of tax avoidance by her non-dom status relating to that family firm of hers, Infosys, and her income from all of that. The difference is only one of legality here, isn't it? Certainly not one of morality. Still, what do morals matter when it would seem getting rich is all that drives these people? Zahawi, being so snafu'd by all of this, the signs are there that he's going to be dumped in a face-saving operation. Sunak has denied all knowledge of Zahawi getting fined just this morning. A sure sign he's going to drop him like a bad habit, despite still publicly saying he supports him. After all, he denied all knowledge of his own wife's tax affairs for ages, which was just a ludicrous stance to take at the time, being the Chancellor of the country as he was, running the nation's purse strings, yet somehow not having a clue of the financial situation within his own household. But given that his actions over that, it strikes me that it points to a loss of support from the top for Nadhim Zahawi going into this investigation. That's not to say Zahawi hasn't had support, of course, from his fellow Tories. But when you have the likes of James Cleverly in your corner defending Zahawi on the basis that he's a successful businessman, it's as hilarious for us as it is confirmation that he's probably as guilty as sin. Successful businessmen pay their taxes. Dodgy ones don't. Dodgy multi-millionaire ones like Nads appears to be aren't just dodgy, but greedy with it. People have been jailed for less than this. This is of the utmost importance, so the pressure really ought to be on for Sir Laurie Magnus. But who is he? Can we trust him? Is he qualified to know dodginess and sleaze when he sees it? Well, Magnus used to work for Robert Maxwell, the newspaper tycoon, and was also an advisor for disgraced BHS pension pot raider Philip Green. So you could say that on the face of it, he's the ultimate expert. A cynic like myself would think more along the lines of, if these are the sort of people he's associated with in his past professional career, what does that say about him? So Laurie Magnus is a hereditary knight, so the Sir has been handed down from a senior member of his family, in his case, an uncle. He's another old Etonian establishment figure who has spent his career running quangos, one of those odd words you hear on the news, but what is basically a government agency that has had powers over a certain issue devolved to it. They are still controlled or financed by government, but functionally, where there's a stuff up over something, it's one of those convenient scapegoats governments can point to. Well, so Laurie Magnus is the Quango King. He's chaired plenty of them, several in fact, but most notably the one known as Historic England, and it was in this role he made a stand against the removal of the Edward Colston slave trader statue in Bristol being removed, before locals took that matter into their own hands, quite literally. Outside of running government devolvements, he was an investment banker. Oh, one of them! Gee, I wonder what Sunak saw in him. And remains a chair of 2 FTSE 250 investment trusts. Now, if I were to look positively on this is a guy who clearly should know financial sleaze when he sees it and ought to be able to do a good job. If I were to look cynically at it, he's only being allowed to do so because Zahawi is now more of a liability than he's worth, and Sunak needs an independent recommendation to get rid of him.